I think there's enough thunder to go around for Hamilton, and I will introduce him and then let him get to the presentation. Before we do that, let me remind those of you that didn't know, this is the mail out for this month, house to house, heart to heart for Buchanan. So we're sending out to 1,000 people. If you didn't see, there's a copy back there for you to take home if you're not living on one of those routes. The theme we've selected for our summer series, I believe, is one of the most important that we could consider, and not just here, but anywhere in our brotherhood, because the issue that he will discuss is one, as he will explain to us, is faced all around. So we got to thinking about what might we do to help. And I realized that there's some talent right here nearby, and those who are interested in this theme and who are preparing themselves to deal with these kinds of issues. So I asked my son-in-law, Hamilton Debary, who's a deacon at the Bremen congregation, if he would kick this off for us and to present to us the problems of our young people, as you can see indicated, why they're leaving us. Hamilton's a graduate of Faulkner University with a business admin degree, I think. And he works for the Carrollton City Schools, so he's involved with educators and education regularly. And he also can claim as his pedigree being raised in Montgomery, Alabama, as having participated in the Del Reyta Church in their youth and in their college programs. So he was well entrenched in that and knew a lot about it. So he has his bona fides, you might say, and he also has a passion for this subject. So without more ado, Hamilton.
Thank you, Philip, for the introduction, and I thank y'all for the opportunity to have me here at Buchanan. I'm honored to be here and be included in this lineup. Y'all have some great speakers lined up, and I think y'all messed up because you lined me up first of all. But with all seriousness, though, I'm excited about this subject. I have a great passion about the youth. I am not the best speaker, and you might learn that. I will probably read my notes a good bit. I'm not comfortable that much in front of people, but the one thing that I do care about is our youth. There is a problem that we have in the church. We are losing our youth, and that we will get into that. But that's one thing that rings kind of hits close to home for me. I have 4 kids. I come from a family with 4 kids. I have 3 siblings. We are all part of the church, actually fairly close in age, about 2 years apart from each other. And we all part of the same youth group. Our parents, they're faithful. They actually attend at the University Church of Christ in Montgomery. But I'm the only one that's faithful in my family from from my siblings. And really, there's not much difference in how we were raised. Actually, there's no difference in how we were raised, outside of maybe some of the stuff we didn't listen to, because obviously some stuff stuck and some stuff didn't with my siblings. But the biggest difference that I can think of is I had a great group of friends growing up that was close to me. My brother didn't. My youngest sister didn't. And then my oldest sister might be the exception to the rule on that. But that's kind of why this kind of hits home to me, because I've realized that there is a problem that we have in the church, and we do need to address it sooner or later, because they are the future of our church. With that being said, let's begin by asking ourselves some questions that really probably resonate with all of us. We all probably know someone that is younger, whether it be your parents or grandparents or just members of the church. But the question is, why do our youth drift away? What are the challenges that we might face? What are some challenges that the youth might face that we might not be fully grasping? There's a big generational gap, and we'll get to that. But how can we bridge the gap and make the church a place where they feel welcomed, valued, and understood? It's no secret, like I said, that we are losing our youth, but let's see what we can, let's see what's happening before our eyes. I can tell you this all day long, but let's confirm it with some studies that have been done by Barna Research Group and Lifeway Research. If you see here, in the book Already Gone, we find a breakdown of the study that was done by Lifeway Research. Based on interviews with 22,000 adults and over 2,000 teenagers, over 66% of them admitted that they were stopped attending church regularly, at least between the years of 18 and 22. Despite the strong levels of spiritual activity during their teen years, most 20-somethings disengaged from active participation in the Christian faith during their young adult years and often beyond that. In this study, they found out that nearly 50% of the teens that attended church-related services or activities on a regular basis. These numbers might be a bit confusing, but what they're basically saying, of the 22,000 and the 2,000 that they surveyed, nearly 50% of them were young people who regularly attended church services and activities on a regular basis, but that still didn't affect the numbers of 66% of them losing their attendance or dropping out of their attendance. More than three quarters of them talked about their faith with their friends, and 3 out of 5 of them attended at least one youth group meeting at church during a typical 3-month period. 1/3 of teenagers participated in Christian clubs at school as well. As you can see, it's not enough to have the teens come to church and appear active. That's all well and good, but there is a faith. But is their faith strong enough to continue into young adulthood? Unfortunately, it does not appear to be that is the case. Although our pews are filled, we are losing 66% of our youth once they leave home. Another graph that shows even further into this, the study breaks down these numbers even more as these individuals became older. They followed up with them years later to see if they had returned to the church, to see if maybe it was just college that affected them or young adulthood. But 29% of them did not attend. 39% of them attended once a month or less. That's 68% of our young people that are gone or lost. In another study, they also found that the dropout rate for young adults accelerates with age. This to me was kind of surprising, but I guess with how the college affects them maybe, and them being out on their own. 17%, which I imagine most of those were at home still, was the highest at 69%. But once they got to the age of 18, it dropped down to 58%. And at 19, 40%. And then once they reached into their 20s, it was 1 in 3 that were attending church on a regular basis. If these numbers aren't telling enough, and I will admit that these studies and surveys that they did, these are surveying individuals who aren't just part of the Church of Christ. These are kind of surveying other denominations as well. And so some of these numbers might not consistently reflect the church, but they give us a good idea of what's going on in our society. But one more example that I have, and this one actually is an example of the Church of Christ and how it's been affected, is I have a friend and a mentor of mine. He used to be the campus minister at Tide for Christ. This is a church that served as the campus church at the University of Alabama. At the beginning of each semester, he would get information from churches and parents who had teens going to the University of Alabama. He had a list of over 1,300 young, faithful college kids, and he would go knock on every door. He would introduce himself, he would tell them about the ministry, and he would welcome them to the Tide for Christ. Of the 1,300 students, only 200 to 300 of them remained active in the campus ministry. That's only 15 to 23% involvement. These numbers should be a concern for our church, and we have to face the brutal reality that we are losing this generation. We are failing to reach them, and we are struggling to keep this generation a part of the church. So let's get down to the question. So why are we losing these young people? Why are they leaving the church? Well, through much research and looking over statistics about the youth in the church, I believe three main things impact why we are losing our church. The first one has to do with our culture around us. The culture of today is influencing our young ones. The second cause is that we as parents and we as the church are failing to properly train and prepare our young people to be strong, faithful Christians. And lastly, we the church are failing to be unified in Christ. We are failing to be a church family, especially to those who are younger. So let's dig in, and let's go ahead and move into why our culture around us has had a huge impact and influence on our younger generation. Well, you probably can look around and see what's going on in our country, but it has moved further and further away from the principles, morals, and values on which our country was founded. We as Christians are called to be the light of this world, but for young people, the influence of our culture can be overwhelming. We have to help and prepare our youth for this, and we need to teach them what we are told over and over again in the Bible, that we should not be of the world. James 1:27 tells us that religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. I think we focus a lot on the first part of that about the orphans and the widows, which we should, but it's very important to follow through and see that last part of it, because I think that really defines what we are as Christians. We are to be in the world, but not be of the world. We should be that light to them. Romans 12:2 also kind of hits the same point. It says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. The problem is that we as parents and we as the church are failing to prepare our youth to live in the world, but not be of the world. I'd like for us to stop real quick before we go any further, and I want you to look at the picture that I have above here. It's probably, to you, you're like, oh, well, that's a fairly simple graphic. But in this picture, there's two squares that's labeled A and B, and this might be testing your eyesight as well, because it might be a little bit smaller than I intended. But the squares you're looking at, are they the same color, or is one darker and one is lighter? What are you perceiving from this image? Well, if you see, I'm going to bring up another image, and it's the same image. I tested this out, by the way. I went to Photoshop and tested the colors to make sure that I wasn't being misled, because I couldn't believe it at first. But you see the shadow of the cylinder, it makes you think the squares are different colors. But when you see the two outside lines, when you use the two outside lines to focus in on the squares, you can finally see the truth and realize your perception has been influenced by the shadow. Well, this image shows us that perception is very important. This illustration shows us that our brain can be trained to think in certain ways. Our minds are very powerful and are always trying to create shortcuts with what we see and what we experience. I want us to keep this example in mind when it comes to what we are considering tonight. What can influence us to change our perception of things? And if mature, knowledgeable, faithful Christians can be swayed, what chance does our youth have? So whether we realize it or not, we are being influenced. As adults, we are exposed to ungodly lifestyles, but we know better, or rather we should at least know better. But what about our youth? Do they know better? How strong is the foundation of their faith? As we often sing in VBS, is their house built on the rock, or is it built on the sand? Cultural influences surround us through TV, video games, Apparently I was laser pointing the ceiling. But through TV, video games, celebrities, social media, our phones and devices, and online content, all of those that I've displayed up there, they are having some effect on our kids. Not those specifically, but these are examples of how they can be influencing our kids. And our kids might not even realize it. They probably are thinking the nice, fun trend, but not even realize that they are being influenced. So technology has played a huge part in how we are influenced. With social media, young people are being affected by the dangers of knowing everything at all times. They're being affected by always being plugged in, and they do not get an escape. Always in contact with their friends. And in a 2023 study, they found that a teenager receives over 237 notifications a day. I had to double check that one as well. And it's over it. It's not even 237 notifications. It's over that many a day. And that's the average. I'm sure there's teenagers that are receiving way more than that as well. Well, I don't want to get too much into technology because Brother Aaron Stice will be speaking in a few weeks about this. And I don't want to step on his lesson too much and steal any material from him. But I do want to focus on this brief thought about technology. The values and beliefs of our society are being pushed onto our young people by influencers. And that is, there are titles out there with social media influencers, and their job is specifically to push out ideas, beliefs. A lot of it is products in marketing and stuff like that. But not only is this social media dangerous, but it must be taken with caution. Another way that most kids are probably accessing all this social media is through the phones. And this is something that they probably have with them maybe 24/7. That's just the truth of it all. Depending on what limitations are set by their parents, they could have their phones all the time. And then also, let's not forget about Google. I'm sure you've heard someone say, "Let me Google that." The answers to everything they have are at their fingertips with their phones. And not just Google. Now we have artificial intelligence like ChatGPT. I can't think of Google's. But there's different types of AI out there that really, I'm not kidding when I say I could have said, write me a speech about why we're losing our youth, and it would have not just written a speech, probably written a speech that was better prepared than what I presented today. It's crazy how far technology has gone. Matter of fact, ChatGPT 4.0 passed the bar exam on the first try. And it was the higher percentile of it too, which I didn't know there was a certain percentile with the bar exam. I just thought you passed it. But it's the truth of the matter is the AI has really gone crazy. And I'll tell you, with education, it has really pushed the people in technology to really figure out how to deal with it and how to anticipate the obstacles that we run into with that. Because trust me, if we're aware of it, these kids are way ahead of us. And all this is just information overload, and our young people are dealing with it. And the question is are we preparing them for this? And it's not just information either. They also have an ease to talk to people online. It is a dangerous world, and it's a world that is clashing with the morals and principles of God's word. Not only is this world clashing with it, it is outright removing the very existence of the Christian faith. So my question would be, if you have a teenager, if you have a child, or if you know granddaughter, aunt, uncle, would you leave your teenager in the middle of the most dangerous and corrupt city without an adult, unsupervised, no one to tell them where to go, what places that are dangerous that they need to avoid? What about the people that they talk to? You see, if we give them a phone or social media or any device without a filter, without something to protect them and guard them, we are essentially leaving them in these dangerous cities with dangerous people, dangerous places to go, without anyone chaperoning them. Now, I'll be honest, this makes it seem like I'm hating on technology when my profession is in technology. I love technology. I need to keep my job. But this is how useful, and this is how dangerous they can be. Technology, phones, social media, they are very useful and have a tremendous amount of benefits. Matter of fact, I go to YouTube for most anything that I need to fix. Like, matter of fact, with my job, if I have to replace a screen on a computer and it's one of those complicated ones, YouTube's my best friend. Same thing with Google, and really same thing with ChatGPT now. But anything at home that I've done, because I like to fix things, and I can be a handyman at stuff, I normally go to YouTube first, which maybe I need to read some more also, but it is so useful and it's so helpful. It's like a shortcut. But we have to be gatekeepers of our children, and we have to guide them and guard them. We must protect them and keep them from the world. But with phones, social media, and technology, we are bringing the world to them if we do not filter what they are seeing. Studies show that young people are seeking acceptance, they are seeking a sense of belonging, and they are trying to find out who they are and what their identity is. If the church cannot help them find these things, then young people will turn to something else. The world is just waiting and ready to accept them, and it is at their fingertips when we give them technology. So the culture has influence on our kids, but let's not forget, we also can have an influence on our culture, and we're called to do it. God calls us to be different and to be not of the world, but a light to those around us. We as parents, grandparents, and members of Christ Church need to remember this and live it, which leads us to our next 2 points. These points are really what I found to be the root of the problem. If we address these issues, then the culture does not have the impact and influence that it does on our young people. So young people are leaving the church, but what appears when they're leaving it is not when they're in their parents' house, but when they get to college and young adult years. And it doesn't have to be college. It shows over like that. It's not specific to college. It's young adulthood. They could get a job on their own. They could go to the military, but they are essentially dropping out. If we look back at the survey from Lifeway Research, where 66% of the youth are failing to attend church consistently, they actually broke it down even more to see what the top 5 reasons were why young people stopped attending. 34% said that I moved to college and stopped attending church. 32% said church members seemed judgmental or hypocritical. 29% said I didn't feel connected to the people in my church. 25% said I disagreed with the church's stance on political, social issues. And then 24% said my work responsibilities preventing me from attending. Now, this might seem a bit harsh, but I truly believe these reasons could have been avoided if the teaching and training of these individuals were treated with the utmost importance. The reasons given in this study show that these individuals were lacking in faith and in knowledge. They had a weak foundation, and because of it, they fell away. What are we doing to prepare our children? Are we teaching them the simple Bible basics? Or how are we adapting our teaching to the way this generation is learning? This next slide might be difficult to read, but it does have some powerful information on it. It breaks down, and I don't know how they decided the spiritual level, but it basically says these are the best predictors of spiritual health among young adults. And a lot of them are really basic and simple things that parents and the church can be doing. The highest percentage of thing that led to them being more spiritual was them reading the Bible while growing up. That is very basic and very simple for us to do. Maybe take the phone away and let them read the Bible, or download the Bible app on their phone and they can have the screen but still read the Bible. Regular spend time in prayer while growing up. That's a tough one, I think. I mean, like, you try to teach it to them, but what that takes is time. It takes time to sit down with them and pray with them. And that's the thing, is it's not just them doing it, but it in the article, it says that the parents doing it with them really made a difference. Child regular served in church while growing up, and the child listened to primary music. Child anticipated church mission trips and projects. Child's best friend was an influence to follow Christ while growing up. This one's kind of funny in my opinion. Child was a female. It showed that realistically, child being a female actually showed that them have a higher spiritual level. I don't know if that's a thing to praise women for or to show the lack of leadership that we have in probably the men of the church. Because I do think that is a result of maybe fathers not stepping up and being the leader of their family. Not saying that women shouldn't help and be a great example, but fathers do need to step up as well. And then the child connected with several adults at church who intentionally invested in them. Parents typically ask forgiveness when they messed up. And I'm going to show you, I highlighted a few, because these were main things that I felt like that really, especially I can identify with and say that these affected how I grew up. I was part of a fairly large youth group, and it was a strong one too. I won't get into the percentage because I have tried to calculate the numbers before, but it's above 80% of us still being faithful. And at times we had close to 100 people in our Wednesday night class. Now, a lot of those were visitors, but still, it just shows you that we were growing and we were holding each other accountable and wanting to be there. Now, the things that are kind of some negative predictors, child did not want to go to church as a teen. That, to me, is a big red flag. As adults, that should be a big red flag as well. We should want to go to church. We should want to be around other Christians of the faith. We should want to learn more about God. Child was rebellious growing up. Child listened primarily to secular and popular music. Now this last one I left on there, but it's a bit confusing with how it worded. It says each drop in level of frequency of family church service attendance growing up. So what I imagine that was talking about is each time a family might have missed attending church, that kept on and feeding into the negative predictor of them having less spiritual level. I thought that was a very interesting graphic, though. Our young people are affected with their attention spans. And this is something that, unfortunately, we do have to face the facts with this one. They are being influenced by our culture, by our society, and these social media platforms are doing it. Attention spans are not what they're used to, and I'll admit that my attention span has also been affected by some of these things, especially when you look at the influence of social media. Short videos have really become a popular new trend among social media. TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. If you think of a social media platform, they have it because one did it, it was successful, and they're like, no, we're all going to catch up with that. I think Snapchat actually started it, but I think TikTok really might be the reigning champion right now. I can't say that's true, though, but maybe that's my opinion. These videos are short, engaging video clips, which are usually less than a minute long. They can be longer now, but young people can just watch video after video scrolling through them. And I'll admit, I've become guilty with it too. YouTube Shorts is one that I can really just get lost in. But it has trained our young people. It has trained them that their attention span is shorter. Not only that, it has trained how they learn things, how they want to listen to things as well. The way they learn is wanting the information to be direct and straight to the point and in a short amount of time. They want to learn relevant topics that they have to do with their daily walks of their life as well. Comes from a different study also. Now the thing is we don't need to change our message. The Bible is God's perfect word, and there isn't anything that we need to change about it, but maybe we should reassess how we're reaching and teaching our young people. That doesn't mean change completely, but maybe reassess of how we're doing it. I believe the church is doing a good job of teaching the Bible to our younger people, but there's a difference between teaching and training. Oh, Sorry, I'll get to that one in a second. Proverbs 22:6 tells us that train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Ephesians 6:4 tells us, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. We need to train our children in the home as parents and in the classroom at church. Yes, we need to teach them the Bible, but we need to prepare them for the world. If we are doing that, then if we're already doing that, we need to take it a step further. Deuteronomy 6:5-9 tells us, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and you shall be as frontlets between your eyes. They shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Is God's word on our hearts? Is it on the hearts of our youth? Are we teaching them in the Bible to our children diligently? The implication of this passage is for us to talk about these words all the time. Whenever we get a chance, we need to instill God's word on our young people's hearts. But not just reach them. Well, hold on. Let me get to this one. Because this one I thought was very telling. In a study, they asked how often, of those people who dropped out, did you often attend Sunday school? 61% said yes, 39% said no. But the ones that said yes to attending Sunday school said they were more likely to not believe that all the accounts and the stories in the Bible were true or accurate. They were more likely to doubt the Bible because it was written by men. I won't go in all these, but it was more likely to view the church as hypocritical also. This was surprising to me because it basically kind of put on the implication that Sunday school didn't really have an effect. Actually, it might have had a opposite effect. And the only thing that I can think of is Sunday school wasn't teaching them what they needed to be heard. Maybe there was something that was missing with the Sunday school curriculum to where we needed to relate with the youth, the young people, and maybe it could have been the fact that not was it just the Bible basics that we needed to teach them, but we needed to get into more in-depth study with them, build that foundation that they needed. Which leads me to my next point. Not only do we need to just teach them these things, but we need to have an in-depth study of why God tells us to do these things. For example, church attendance is crucially important. We should be here as much as we can. Not only should we be here because we should want to, but because God commanded it. But we should also be excited to be here and to see other Christians. We should be excited to gather together and worship and study. The church is for our benefit. It can be a spiritual recharge throughout the week. Do our young people understand that? And really for that, I kind of say these statistics are telling us that they didn't understand it. Which this all leads to my last point. We need to be unified together in the church. I believe there can be a generational gap between our youth and other age groups as well. We need to not see our differences, but think of ourselves like Paul described it. We are members of one body. We need to communicate together. We need to work together, and we need to spend time together. And this isn't just saying, hey, older people, we need to do this. We need to tell the younger people, you need to be actively involved to also seek that, to kind of cancel that generational gap, and we need to include everyone together and actually act like a church family. 1 Corinthians 12:25-26 tells us that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. I like that last verse where it talks about if one member suffers, all suffer. And then if one is honored, we shall all rejoice. It really shows a tightly knit group tightly knit group of people, a family, a community that's close together, and we need to view each other and care for each other in that same way. Obviously, we see that in Acts chapter 4. It talks about the fact that they were together and none of them were in need of things because they shared those things with each other. As I said in my introduction, I firmly believe that my faith is solid because of the unity my church and youth group possessed. Going back to our study about the 68% that were lost, y'all like that? Let's focus about the 31%. The 31% are the ones that attended twice a month or more. And do you want to know what these were? The 31%, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. The 31% that we're talking about, because I did give you a lot of information, these were part of the 66% that left when they were younger. The 31% came back to church. They started attending again. They started attending twice a month or more. You want to know what the highest reason for that was? It wasn't that they were taught they should. It wasn't that they knew better. It wasn't that they wanted to be involved and they were seeking it. It was because they had a parent or a mentor that held them accountable and checked up on them. It was they remembered that parent, that the mentor cared for them and was actively involved in their life. And matter of fact, there's a different study. I don't have it, but it's called Sticky Faith. But this was a group of people were wondering why people were leaving the church, especially young people. But instead of them focusing on the larger number that were leaving the church, they said, let's focus about the ones that are staying in the church. Let's see what made a difference for them to stay in the church. And that's what it confirmed. It confirmed, and it wasn't just necessary as a parent, although as parents, we do need to do this, but it said it when 3 or more people were actively involved in that young person's life, when they were not just asking them how they were doing, but showed that they loved and cared for that individual, that they would drop anything to go help them if their car broke down on the side of the road. True brotherly love. When that was affected, I think it was over 90% of them remained faithful in the church. It was astonishing numbers, and it kind of just shows how much we can have an impression on our young people if we do what God has told us to do in the church. So what about the church today? Can we say we are a close, tightly knit church family? The church is for us to lean upon each other, to build each other up, and to help keep each other out of the world. But we must understand that as individuals, we can make the church stronger or we can make the church weaker. If members are not committed and growing in their faith, then the church suffers. One more study to mention. It says it was found that young Christians believe that discipleship can be accomplished as a solo effort. It showed some more statistics of how their journey and their faith was a personal one and not a public one. And to me, that just shows that our young people are feeling that they're not part of the church, that they're missing the point, and we need to be better to help teach them about it, but also teach through example and show them. But as the church, we need to help the youth feel valued. We need to be a church in which the members can lean on each other, serve each other, encourage each other, and have love for each other. We must keep this in mind, especially when it comes to our youth. My question to you tonight is, are we showing love to our youth? John 13:34 through 35. I knew I was going to get tongue twisted on one of these. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to have love for one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Are we serving the youth? For you are Galatians 5:13. For you are called to freedom. Brothers, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. And then are we encouraging our youth? Hebrews 10:24 and 25 tells us, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting them to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. How are you today contributing to the growth of the church? Are you building up the youth, or are you playing a part in their loss? Do I need to offer an invitation or? Okay. Well, that's all I have for tonight. I've enjoyed this study and learning more about this, and I hope it's benefited y'all as well. Thank you. 9:04.